This is the CreaseCast.
What's the best Christmas Carol movie?
Yeah, I guess there's like a lot to choose from. I think
There's
you can
so-
rank them because some of them are very, very bad.
Some of them are very bad. There's like the one that's so it's Jim Carrey in mocap, as a mocap Scrooge, where
Yeah, that one is
like, God.
an outright horror movie.
all of
like-
those there's
They're
why
they're
remember
pretty
when that was
creepy
a
to
thing?
begin with, right?
Oh,
Like,
God,
they
yeah.
it's supposed to be like a message of like, oh, be nice on this wonderful day and treat people with respect. Don't be like such a curmudgeon and miserable
Yes.
and focus on money. But it's told in like the scariest way that any kid is just going to be scared of that person and not really take away the message.
Yeah.
So you kind of like shoot yourself in the foot right out the get-go.
Yeah. Especially in that particular setting of like that like animation style where because that was a thing for a while. Like there's two movies that are
Yeah.
like that in
There's that
in Holiday
and-
Lure. There's that one in the Polar Express. And in both
Yeah.
those movies, I don't know what the hell they were doing on the animation there, but they all look like they have dead eyes. Like they
Well,
all
the guy that's he's behind those two, and he's behind a movie called Beowulf, which was
Oh,
like
no.
an adaptation of the Beowulf legend starring I don't know, like Ray Winstone and like Angelina Jolie or something. But it bombed terribly and it cost like a shit zillion dollars to make. And of course, because people were like, well, it cost $300 million to animate something, and the biggest complaints from viewers were it was off-putting. Like it's kind of like the Grand Moff Tarkin thing in Star Wars, where like your brain recognizes that something is off with the animation, but like you can kind of
Uncanny
tolerate
Valley.
it. Yeah, and for the Beowulf movie, it was just straight up like, oh no, this is just really bad animation. Polar Express, same thing. Everyone had the dead expression in their face. Like there was just nothing going on in this range, like nose up. There was nothing. They'd be like, oh my God, it's Santa. I'm so happy. And they'd just be like, dead face, eyebrows
God,
sullen.
I just looked up Beowulf because I'd never like heard of it or seen it. Like,
Yeah.
oh God, no!
Yeah,
like
it's bad, man.
That is really bad. Why does Angelina Jolie look like she's got like a plastic? Like she looks like a plastic toy. Like that's so weird. Oh God,
Well,
no.
this was like people's questions because like it was all mocap, and Robert Zemeckis, the director at the time, thought it was going to be,
The big
I guess,
thing.
the wave of the future movie making is that everyone's in mocap and you can do a bunch of crazy shit in CGI to amplify like backgrounds and settings and blah 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 blah. Unfortunately, it was like released like during the time of like Morrowind and like video games at the time that like had the exact same quality of graphics.
Yeah.
So everyone was just like, "Oh, this like looks like a cutscene, man. Like this is terrible."
Yeah. There's a lot of
I don't
yeah.
really know why.
Yeah, well, and I remember the big flop out of that whole group and everything being Mars Needs Moms. Like that was like a Disney movie that came out around
Yeah.
that same time, and it was same thing. They all were so off-putting and weird, and that it like flopped big time. It was a 100, like I'm looking at the stats right now. It had a $150 million budget for Mars Needs Moms, and they made back 39 million. It was a massive bomb for them. It's so bad. Yeah.
I almost feel like that killed Robert Zemeckis' career too, because he did Castaway, which was like massive, and then he did Polar Express, which people liked because it kind of was like, all right, it's a fantastical setting, so you can forgive like how bad the animation looks. And then he followed it up with Beowulf and A Christmas Carol, and everyone was like, oh, is this all you got? Is this all you're gonna do? Is this weird CGI shit?
Yeah, these weird glossy eye characters. God, yeah. The apparently he is coming back in 2022 with directing Disney's live action Pinocchio. So that's going to be interesting. Or like not live. God, what do you call these movies? Like they're live
Like
action, but they're totally CGI, but they're not an animated movie because that's different.
I
Like,
really don't like that they call them like the live action. Like remember when they said that for the Lion King? They're like, it's the
that was the funny
live
one.
action Lion King. It's
Lion
like
King. It's like, wait a
everything's
minute.
CGI. What the fuck are you
You're
talking
like,
about?
wait a minute. There's
Yeah.
no people in this thing. What are you talking about? Like, it technically
Yeah.
makes sense for all. Like, I think that's got to be the only Disney movie where that technically doesn't apply because all of the other ones have at least one human actor in
Yeah,
them.
because like Jungle
Like,
Book still had Mowgli, and so that kind of like
Aladdin had
made sense.
Aladdin.
I would
Like,
love them. I'd love them to come out and be like, we're making a live action Bugs Life movie, and it's literally just bugs.
I was gonna say it's just like Danny DeVito in an ant costume or something, or it's like the entire original cast. They're just all in these really big like bug costumes, like a children's play,
Mhm.
essentially. Where they're like,
Well,
"But we gotta stop Hopper."
Well, that's what I kind of thought was going to happen with the Lion King when they're like, we're going to do a live action Lion King because the Lion King was adapted into a theater play, like a
That's right,
huge,
and
massive
it's
play.
still on Broadway. I believe it's one of the
Yeah,
longest running Broadway
it's
plays of all time.
and it's incredibly done, like the way that they found a workaround to display humans as animals for the movie with like the headgear and stuff like that. And so
Yes.
that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, it's just going to be a live action adaptation of a play, which could be very interesting. And then nope, just a bunch of
It's
CGI.
It's just a bunch of
It's not
CGI,
live
and
action.
here's Beyonce as Nala. Enjoy.
Mhm.
Like that.
That's
Yeah,
exactly what it was. It was just like, you'll see it because it's Beyonce, right?
yeah.
Right, guys?
I will say personally, I did like the Lion King movie. Like I thought the remake was really good, specifically
Oh,
just because
I had
like
no interest in seeing it just
it
because
was.
out of principle.
Well, I didn't go to see it in the theaters. Like that's where I draw the line is I'm like, okay, there are movies that I will watch when they come on like Netflix or Disney Plus or something,
Mhm.
but then there are movies that I will pay to go see like say like Spider-Man No Way Home, which I'm seeing tomorrow. No
Yeah.
spoilers. Um and like so like the Lion King I watched it. It was actually like one of the first things I watched when I got my 4K TV, like when I got a TV for the
Mhm.
first time. And I was like, "Oh, this is actually like really good." Like in terms of like the animation quality and everything, like actually looked like that. Like talking about like the difference between what good CGI is and what bad CGI is. Like uh that actually looked like cool, like it looked real in the correct way. Everything looked real in the correct way. Like the animals all looked really like accurate, and then you had some good voices going on, like the voices that they did use I thought were
Mhm.
actually really good casting. Like Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner as Timon and Pumbaa is actually really good.
It's pretty
And
spot on.
John Oliver as Zazu, like replacing Rowan Atkinson, like that's a pretty good fit. And the fact that they didn't touch James Earl Jones' role as Mufasa,
Yeah. Yeah,
like
there's like,
that's like a
there's no point.
yeah, there's no way anyone can top this. Of course, they then of course went back on that logic when they made Aladdin, like knowing full well that nobody could top Robin Williams
Yeah,
as the
they're like,
genie.
we can't really do this, but we need to make money.
Yes,
So
I've still never seen that movie, the
me
Aladdin
neither.
remake, because I
Out of
refuse to. I refuse
out of
to.
pure principle, I refuse to watch any of the live action remakes or any remakes in general because it's kind of like it's clearly just a cash grab. There's nothing new added to like the movie. There's nothing fresh. It's just purely Disney being like, let's remake properties and make more money again. That's all
Yeah,
it is. And so it's
remember
like
that
it's very hollow and
remember all
kind
the
of
songs you
cold.
loved?
Yeah, yeah.
Here's
Here they
all of
are
them
again,
again. Here's all of them again, but maybe one more? Like,
but
you know, like,
with Beyonce singing them now.
but
How
with Josh
fun!
Gad? Like,
Oh
yeah,
god,
yeah. Oh
that
god,
guy
I
annoys the shit out of me so
isn't
much.
isn't live action Frozen coming out at some point? Like, I don't
Oh,
know if they've
probably.
announced that, but I'm like, I'm surprised it's not already in existence, live action
Why wouldn't it
Frozen.
be? They gotta make money somehow, right? They gotta pay
Yeah,
off the Marvel deal somehow, or
yeah. Well,
or
Marvel
the
makes
Star
money.
Wars deal,
Yeah,
right?
Marvel makes money. Like they don't have to worry about that. They clear that thing
Yeah.
is a cash cow. But yeah, maybe Star Wars where some money definitely got lost. There was the thing today we're talking about Rise of Skywalker. It's been 2 years since that came out. That's the last movie. That was the last movie I saw in theaters before the pandemic hit.
Oh
Up
snap.
until very recently, I think it would have been in July when I went to see Black Widow. That was the first time I'd been to the theaters in that time. I'll say that Black Widow was a much better movie than Rise of Skywalker.
Well, the
I
bar
went,
was kind of like the Canucks. It was on the floor, so it was
yes.
pretty easy to top one of the worst theatrical blockbusters I think I've ever seen.
Was like that one. It was bad in one of those ways where it was like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it was one of those things where it was like, God, this podcast turned into us just going straight into movie talk so quickly.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, do we even want to talk about how that the league is shut down?
We will.
Quick addendum.
Yeah, we
Just
will.
so you know, folks, we will talk about
yes.
Canucks related things, but there's no point because the season is shut down. We're recording Monday night at 6:30. Looks like more protocols and restrictions are coming down the pipeline in the next 24 hours. So this isn't really going to be about hockey because there's nothing going on. Yeah.
Not too
instead,
much,
we're going to be talking about a bunch of movies for the first 10 minutes. As I'm sure you heard, that isn't an error. That's not a glitch. It's intentional. We got nothing really to talk about for the hockey team unless you want to talk about Darren Brady getting called up from the ECHL to play for the Farm.
Oh my
Nobody
God,
does.
let's spend 20 minutes on that.
Let us.
I mean, okay. Let's get the Canucks stuff out of the way because I think that is the part that people came here for, especially considering apparently I read today that Spotify now also has a rating system now in place the way Apple Podcast does. So
So we got to be good on multiple platforms now.
Yeah, please leave us a 5-star review for Christmas this year. That would be lovely. That'd be a great present.
That's your guys' gift to us is just shoot us a 5-star, okay?
Yes, please.
Don't listen to anything after this or any of our opinions. Just give us a 5-star and we'll really appreciate it.
Yes, we really appreciate it. So yeah, the Canucks have practiced today. I don't believe they did yesterday.
Nope.
They will be on Tuesday when this episode gets to your ears. Or your eyeballs if you're watching the video versions. And I think, but after that, they're done. The NHL is putting a pause, I believe, on all team activities from the 23rd up until the end of the Christmas break, which I believe is technically the 27th, which is when the Canucks are still scheduled to play the Seattle Kraken in Vancouver. That, of course, depends entirely on if cross-border play is allowed again.
They just canceled the Kraken's game that was supposed to happen tonight, so I think it's pretty safe to assume that it's just going to get canceled as well. Like, there's just no way that they're going to randomly cancel one Kraken game but allow a cross-border game to happen between them and the Canucks. Like, that would be a bit odd. So, fully expecting like there to just be like no games whatsoever.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up with no games for the rest of till the new year, essentially. Like, because here's the thing, right? January 1st is when is supposed to be the Winter Classic game at Target Field in Minnesota. I have a hard time believing that unless things get super, super dire, that the NHL is going to cancel that. That's their marquee event, their big cash cow. They need that game on TV. To get those ratings in, to get that revenue in. That's not getting canceled. But I don't think it's entirely out of the realm of possibility that they stop that they postpone any games until the rest of the new year. The big problem being that that's a lot of games to try and fit back into the schedule again.
Yeah.
Because they're not, I guess we should clarify, not canceling, they're postponing most of them.
They're delaying them, right? Their whole idea is they don't want to run the season too long into the summer. They're basically they hoped this year would be like a reset to the normal 82 game schedule end in June or the third week of June or whenever it is, right? So I don't think they really want to see another repeat of the bubble situation where we're looking at like an August finish of the regular season. Like that's like the last thing they want. So maybe we'll start seeing some cancellations if maybe guys return from their Christmas break and they're still testing positive, because the chances are half of these guys are going to return home or spend time with family over the Christmas holidays and the New Year's, and they're going to come back to their teams in the first week of the new year, and you're going to see a ramp up in cases, and the league's going to have to reschedule everything, which a little spooky because, I mean, personally, I don't want to, as much as I love the bubble summer, where it was just like there was nothing going on and you could watch hockey
all
until
day
August.
long.
Like that was
Yeah,
great. That
that
was
was
so
great.
fun.
That was
Like it
fun
made
once.
yeah, it's fun once a decade, but every summer where you're reminded that you're living in a pandemic nightmare hell world,
Yeah.
yeah, it gets tired pretty quick.
Yeah, it gets
So
tired pretty quick, and we're also the people, and we're not even the people who have to go to that bubble and play in that isolation for 2 months and
yeah.
stay potentially for months on end up to in a without their family, without anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not looking super great in terms of like games right now. Like, interesting note of which, like, I was supposed to go to the game on Wednesday against the Ducks,
Mm.
and like they postponed that game. They're not issuing refunds. They're postponing because it's a postponed game. They're like, hold on to it until a later date. And it's like, okay, hopefully but you are going to give us our money back if there isn't a game, right? And it's the
Right?
Anakin meme. Yeah. It's the Anakin and Padme meme.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But like, there's worry. And at the end of the day, like we've said it all through this year of this show, as we round the corner into like literally our 1 year anniversary of doing the show together. Like we're getting pretty close
Mhm.
to that day. Um, we've said the whole time that the health and safety of the players is the most important thing in these sorts of cases. And
Mhm.
even more, and really even more so in this case now, where the entire league outside of a couple holdovers is vaccinated. You look at a guy like Luke Shen, for example. He was vaccinated. He's fully vaccinated, but he came out today and said he was confirmed to have the Omicron variant,
Yeah.
which is not good. And that's that's the new variant that's flying around right now. And at the end of the day, the thing that you can take solace in right now is that, pro athletes have access to, the best medical, the best doctors, and all sorts of things. They're going to be fine at the end of the day, hopefully, like knock on wood.
Mm.
Pro athletes are usually going to be okay in these situations. What's most important, though, is about the fact that they don't pass it on to people who don't have those kinds of who don't have those options and don't have those access to the same kinds of resources that they do. And
Mm.
it's good that they're going to take it seriously enough to like postpone games for a while, let the players recover, make sure that the players don't pass it on to other people, and then and then you can get back to playing some hockey again.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, this is also a good thing for like the guys that were injured too, right? That didn't even have COVID. That like the Travis Hammoniks of the world, right? Who were looking at missing upwards of 10, 15 games of NHL hockey. Like that sucks for them. They might now have a chance to return to a team that still has 68 games on the docket, right? Like so that's I mean, it's a blessing in disguise for some players too, right? Like obviously for the Canucks, where they were riding a wave of momentum, they had a 6-game win streak. I'm sure they were like, let's just keep playing. We want to keep up the good vibes. We don't want to, break up the current streak that we're rolling on.
Yeah.
Um, but at the very least, they'll come back in the new year. Hopefully, I mean, fingers crossed, they come back all without COVID. They're fully healthy. They're ready to keep the momentum going. Who knows? But
Yeah.
it's
It's
it's kind of some dicey times.
It's dicey times. The other good thing, like, okay, if you want to like, I think looking at the positives here is really good in terms of like this kind of situation. Yeah, as we've been going through for the last 2 years, like finding ways
Mhm.
to be positive is always really helpful in these cases. One other good thing that you can look at is the fact that like for Bruce Boudreau as a coach who had to come in mid-season, that's really difficult, especially when you're trying to, like he talked about it today, about
Mhm.
how hard it is to kind of add in your own game plans and your own and implement your own coaching systems when you're not getting regular practices and mostly just doing morning skates prior to a game.
Yeah.
Right now, he's got a little bit of time to essentially do a bit of a mini training camp if he so
Mhm.
chooses with the players that are healthy and available. And can go a long way. Again, as the guy who's coming in with only literally 6 games under his belt at this point,
Yeah.
for him to get that extra time work with the players where there are no games, to give them a little bit of chance. The guys who need rest, the time they need rest. Yeah, that could actually end up being a big benefit to the Canucks when games start getting back underway again.
Yeah, and I kind of liked his or I think it was Bo Horvat's quote. He was like, "Yeah, it's like, I mean, it sucks to not play, but we're getting a mini camp where we can really kind of drill into how Bruce wants us to play," and which, like, is true. They are pretty much riding off from momentum of Bruce Boudreau, basically on the coach or on the bench, saying, "Yeah, just do whatever you guys want to do. Throw pucks on net. I don't really care. Just shoot as much as possible. Try and score. I don't care. That's
No
all
plans,
there is
just
to it."
vibes.
Yeah, like the all vibes team is now going to be all vibes asterisk. We got some plans. We're
Yeah.
kind of trying a bit. Got a little bit of strategy in there. It's not just like completely run and gun, helter skelter hockey. There is some logic behind what Bruce Boudreau wants them to do.
Yeah.
And it would actually be really funny if they spent like this entire break going through Bruce Boudreau's system, and then in the new year when they came back, they were just as bad as they were when they were under Travis Green. Like they
Oh,
just
no,
stuck under the new
why?
system. It
Why
would be
would you
so
say
funny.
that? Why would
It
you
would
do
just be really
that?
funny if like this 6-game win streak was just like this massive blip that was just
That-
like not repeated.
Yeah, like in a way, like that's the thing, and that's kind of the key. The interest, like the whole key here, right, is that in a general sense, like if they maybe don't get the time to get what they're going to get here, where they get this mini camp opportunity, essentially,
Mhm.
maybe that does end up being a blip. It's more likely, I would say, that ends up being a blip because it's really hard to build off of those very emotional, like winning
The
streaks of
quick
like,
highs, you chasing the quick victories, right? Like
yeah,
you're back at it again every second night. You're ready to keep chasing the W, but it's hard when it's like suddenly there's this huge break so
yeah,
that you kind of forget what it's like to chase the immediate high since you're so
yeah.
far removed from that last victory. Like we were talking about it before we started recording. The last game I covered was, my God, I mean, I didn't cover the Blue Jackets game or
Yeah,
the Sharks
the
game, so it
the
would have
ultimate
been
3-0 comeback game, the Sharks game where Brock
yeah,
Besser just went off on poor Aiden Hill,
poor
or
guy.
Thatcher Demko too as well. You've missed a few of like the pretty big games here. We were
Mhm.
gonna come into today talking about like the Leafs, the Coyotes. Now we got none of those, but yeah, like the thing that I said on the last show as well was like, it's really hard. Like it's hard for even the best teams in the NHL to win 6 games in a row. In a way,
Yeah.
it's almost about what you do in the game after the first loss. It's almost about what you can do when you lose that first one after your big long streak and go, okay, we lost one. How do we make sure we go back to winning at at a similar pace to what we had before, on a regular occasion kind of thing, right? Because sometimes when
Mhm.
you're playing that emotional hockey, that immediate crash of losing can sometimes just not turn, you can kind of just turn back into what you were before. So
Yeah.
now you do have a chance to potentially build off of what you've got here and turn it into something a little bit more sustainable over a long period of time, for the rest of the season. I mean, like, look, we were talking about like the Canucks were dead in the water not that long ago. I guess the best Christmas present the Canucks gave us is the fact that right now, in theory, there is kind of hope there that they
Yeah,
might not be
yeah.
as bad as before, and they might actually be able to do something.
They gave Canucks Nation a better Christmas gift than any of their like spouses will give them. They gave them hope as we stare down more restrictions and protocols and lockdowns from the BC government. So it's like, at the very least, Canucks fans will be like, well, next 2 weeks are going to suck. I'm not going to be able to have my Christmas dinner, not going to be able to see anyone or do anything. But the Canucks might come back and go on another run, baby. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the standings right now. The Canucks are currently only are 6 points out of a playoff spot, which is up
Okay.
from a lot less, a lot larger a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like just to give you an idea, the team that's the first team out of the playoff spot, there's 2 of them tied with an identical record. It's the Jets and the Kings. They only have 33 points, and the Canucks have 30. So they're only 3 points behind the 2
Right.
teams right
Right
behind in
immediately
that.
on their tails. And I
Right.
think the Canucks might even have more like 3 or
They,
4 more games played than them too, don't they?
yeah, they do have a few more games played, which is where the rub comes in essentially for the Canucks,
Right.
is they still have to build off of the fact like the Oilers have 6 points more than them, but have 2 games in hand. The right now, I mean, the Western Conference just looks top heavy in general.
Mhm.
But yeah, like the Jets, for example, both teams have both the Kings and the Jets have played 30 games, so they have 1 game in hand on the Canucks with 3 points in front of them. But I mean, the Canucks just beat the Kings relatively recently. They beat the Jets relatively recently. Uh, it's not like it's one of those things where like if you keep kind of winning at a certain pay at like a decent clip, it's not entirely like crazy to imagine a scenario where the Canucks find themselves back in that like eighth seed, seventh seed conversation again somewhere. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of again turning what is a 6 game winning streak into sustainable hockey and being able to do that for all of January through to April, essentially, or maybe even May. That at this rate, like I think there might be some games, some regular season games bleeding into May.
Oh God. Again.
Yeah,
I mean,
again,
regular season game like bleeding into May is completely fine
yeah.
provided the playoffs aren't happening at the exact same time, because that's
That
when
was
it gets
the
like
awful.
really miserable.
That was the most. That was. I don't think I've ever been more like God. Like last year, again, the gas leak year. I've never been
Yes.
more like just like a fever dream sort of state with the Canucks. Where I'm watching this, I'm like, well, I could watch the Canucks season finale, or I could watch Game 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I guess yeah. The
Hmm.
now that
What
you've
to
brought it
do?
up, now that you've brought it up, do you think the gas leak year is officially over, or do we still need to wait and see? Because that was our joke like earlier in the year when they were like, it took like a month to get to their 4th regulation win, and we are like, I
Oh
don't think I
God.
don't think the gas leak year ever
Yeah.
ended. We're still stuck in it. So, for you after the 6-game win streak and like the GM being fired, the owner being fired, or not the owner, the GM and the coaches being fired, are you comfortable saying the gas leak year is over, or do you still think we need to, I don't know, slow the roll a bit and give it a little bit of room to breathe? Because for all we know, they could still lose a shit ton of games and be out of playoffs. Or does it reset when you ditch the coach and the GM?
I honestly think it resets with the GM and the coach because
Fair.
like again, I don't think again, for me it has nothing to do with really the wins in this particular case. Like I went into the coaching change and the management change thinking that well, this year is probably still going to be a lost cause, but that's okay
Hmm.
because long term the future looks a lot better. And you get things like today where there's been rumors that the Canucks are going to be talking to Chris McFarland or are trying to go after Chris McFarland out in Colorado, who is supposed to be one of the best possible guys who is not currently and has never held an NHL GM position, which would be fantastic. Like there's a lot of smart people, smarter people than you or I that are like, Chris McFarland would be a huge get for the Canucks as GM. And
Yeah.
if they went through that, like holy cow, like suddenly things are looking way up, even if the team on the ice doesn't necessarily come out of the gate as red hot as they
Hmm.
are right now. And
It's like,
uh
you know what it is? It's like when after the gas leak year happened, Hulu or whoever it was like, you know what? We made a mistake letting go of Dan Harmon. Let's bring
yes.
back Dan Harmon and a bunch of the writers that quit when Dan Harmon was let go, and we'll try and get the band back together. In this case, they're not getting the band back together, but they're getting a new band that's actually worth bringing back together.
Yeah.
So like you're hearing the names like this Patrick Alvini guy, you're hearing Chris McFarland, you're hearing Jen Botterill too
Jen
as
Botterill.
AGM and interim GM candidates. That's like, I mean, that's inspiring to say the least. Good to know that they're actually exploring not, the Jason Botterill. No offense to Jennifer's brother,
No.
but it's good to know that the GM, he's not like a narrow focused dinosaur. He's got like a bit of a broader view, like, like dinosaurs, if you don't know, dinosaurs had their eyes on like the sides of their heads, so their
Well,
peripheral
they are
vision's
birds. Yeah.
pretty, pretty like all encompassing. So it's
Yeah.
good that he's not just like, I'm only gonna bring in Botterill and Caramanos and Ventura, like guys that I've
All
already
the
worked
same
with, and
people. Yeah.
stick with the same people that worked once and keep trying to get the square peg into the round hole. He's like, I'm gonna start from scratch and build a group that I think I can win with. I like that. I appreciate that that's also coming. Like this news is dropping around Christmas time. Like that's pretty great. Like
Yeah.
that's more hope for the like that almost gets you through this like upcoming shutdown where it's just like, okay, well, in January, I think that's when Rutherford said they're going to start doing in-person interviews. Like they hadn't really settled on anyone yet because he wants to do the in-person interview first, which I'm assuming is probably impacted by the lack of cross-border travel by the governments, right? So it's going to be like they need to be pretty goddamn certain at who they're bringing in before they do the in-person interviews. And so, the very least, we can spend the next 2 weeks or whatever it is speculating on who those in-person candidates are going to be. And hopefully, by the sounds of it, the rumors are at least very encouraging that we're going to get some very progressive, intelligent people into the organization that has basically spent the last 8 years whittling itself down to the least intelligent and the smallest organizational management structure of any NHL team.
Yeah.
So
Like, yeah, just the and even like the and even like the guy and even like that we're hearing some guys who have been around the league as well. It's just the idea that you're hearing things from like management talking about the fact of like, oh, we're gonna have guys who don't necessarily people who don't necessarily see eye to eye on everything.
mhm.
We're gonna bring in as diverse a group as we possibly can in terms of ideas, in terms of backgrounds, and that's fantastic. Again, that makes everybody better. The more different opinions and ideas you get into a room, like to a certain extent, it makes
It's
things a lot better. There is such a thing as too many cooks in the kitchen, but
mhm.
generally speaking, the more people that you can get into a room that will see something in a different way and will see a different angle on the same thing can really make the decision making process a whole lot better when it comes to players, when it
Mhm.
comes to coaches, when it comes to really just about anything, like whether hockey wise or not. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah, and what I've heard too is that Rutherford is like a guy that loves being challenged, actually. Like he isn't a guy who's gonna want a bunch of people around him who are just like, "Yeah, Jim, let's go with your decision. Let's do it." Like he's not a yes man kind of guy. He likes people that approach him with ideas that may challenge his own belief of a player or his view on a trade or whatever it is. And I think that's what a lot of people, what I also heard is that that's why people were kind of shocked that Jonathan Wall was actually let go, because Jonathan Wall was one of those kind of guys who would pitch the counter opinion to management to try and, you know, at least get a different voice into the conversation that wasn't just yeah, let's do this, let's go with it.
Yeah.
Like so, I mean, it's too bad, but at the very,
Yeah.
like you said, at the very least, we're going to get a bunch of challenging opinions that hopefully lead to a better management structure that results in better decision making moving forward, which is quite nice. And I wonder too if some of this decision making is like a PR thing. Like obviously, a lot of the decisions being made lately have been kind of like, we need to salvage our company image. Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but as soon as the game cancellations came down, the Canucks like immediately tweeted that they were donating all of their food to the Salvation Army, which is wonderful, but it's very like, kind of a calculated thing where instantly they were like, "Oh, we know exactly what we're doing with all this food. Please acknowledge like what we're giving back to the community." Then there's the Jen Botterill thing and how a lot of the leaks coming out right now or how Jim Rutherford wants to hire a woman. He wants to get like a different perspective for the team.
Yeah.
Again,
Elliot Friedman
very good PR.
literally mentioned it on Hockey Night in Canada as Jen Botterill was sitting right next to him.
Yeah,
And it was one of those things where it was like the wink wink nudge nudge,
a
you know
little bit.
exactly what's gonna
Like
happen
he
here. Like,
clearly knows how far along she is probably in the interview process, I want to
yeah.
bet.
And the
And
fact that
he
she was
like
like spent the entire time after, like, just praising the other 2 candidates that were there,
Yeah,
which
like,
was
I
Dana
can't
Hefford
talk
and
about my
Angela
application.
Ruggiero, which are both, like,
Mhm, mhm.
really good, really bright hockey minds.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, there are some great candidates in those fields, and, yeah, it was one of those things where, like, in her case, it's, like, seems very much like she is one of the she is almost
It is
as
almost, like,
close to a guarantee.
guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised Kevin Bieksa isn't involved in there somewhere as well. Like, just, like, get the
I
whole
wonder
panel.
well, this kinda goes back to my whole, like, it's the PR. A lot of the moves lately have been PR angles to try and cover all the bases and make up for, like, what has been, like, an atrocious couple of years of, like, just bad looks on the organization from the off season where they lost everybody, the COVID shutdown, like, everything that went down with Jake Virtanen, the way that Travis Green's contract was delayed for so long, and then they fired him, like, into the season because it didn't go well. Just there's so much like they're trying to undo right now, and I'm pretty sure Jim Rutherford has a lot to do with that. Like he's really behind salvaging the perception of the team. And one of the pieces of news that came out today, in a day that should have, like as we said earlier, shouldn't have really had anything noteworthy to talk about, we got Thatcher Demko's retro pads. And we know how much this market loves the flying skate and the retro gear in the black, red, and yellow.
Oh,
And
it is more than just that.
and
It
it
is
is
so much better.
it is a sick fucking kit. That mask he was wearing is so fucking gnarly. It's so good.
It
And a
is
part of me
a
was like,
yeah.
I wonder if they knew the shutdown was coming. Like they had to have known because they already had 2 of their games canceled. They knew Abbotsford's games were getting canceled too. And they were like, let's give the fans more hope for next season and let's get guys talking about our upcoming flying skate night, the retro jersey night, starting with Demko rocking his retro getup.
I'm gonna be honest here. You know what? Like, we've known kind of for quite a while that the skate was coming back in some capacity this year. Because when when the NHL shuffled over to the new prime green
Mhm.
jersey fabric and whatever, like the new way that those are produced, like the more eco-friendly version, they had produced flying skate versions,
Yeah.
which they wouldn't have done if the Canucks weren't planning to use them at some point during the season.
Mhm.
So, like we've known for a while, there were lots of points during the early parts of the season where I was like, why haven't they just panic announced a skate jersey game? Like there were
Yeah.
so many times where I was like, I feel like it would really come in handy. Like I know they have these jerseys ready to go. Wouldn't it just make a lot of sense for them to kind of try and throw them out there really quick while the team is doing poorly to see if it
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
get some people back in the seats? I was surprised that it didn't come out, and it hadn't come out once already yet this year.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's finally coming out now. I will say, like, in terms of like, some people are very cynical about the way that PR is, and like in terms of like how, like how it's all kind of like an agenda sort of thing. You know what I'm saying, right?
Mhm.
Where people will look at it as this very cynic, like a very cynical way. I'll say this, like, in terms of, like, the fact of, like, compared to what the Canucks have been for the last however many years where their PR, like, I shouldn't say the PR department per se, just, like, in terms of the communication between the front office people and both the players and the fans as kind of 2 separate groups, like, that they have to communicate with on a daily basis was terrible, like, awful.
Yeah.
Like, you saw so many examples of it that under Jim Benning, the team had no clue how to communicate, not only with their own darn players, but with the fans as well and what they were trying to do, and often
Mhm.
got caught in the middle of just completely obvious lies that they ran themselves in that they didn't have to lie about.
Yeah.
Um,
Lying for the
so
sake of nothing,
for the
that
sake of no
served no
reason, yeah.
purposes, just, like, almost to make themselves look stupid, which
Yeah,
is
like, they
always
just
a very
completely
bad reason to
unforced
lie.
errors. Yeah,
Yes.
and with this man and if Jim Rutherford wants to come in and essentially say, "Okay, we are going to completely revitalize the public reception and the public perception of this team," good. Like, the team
Mhm.
needs it, and they should be
Absolutely.
and they should expect like, they should hold themselves to, like, that higher standard of what they can and can't do. Like,
Mhm.
the donation donating food. I do think part of that is just due to the fact that they actually kind of know what to do with that in that situation now. Because like last
Mhm.
year or during the bubble when they had all that food ordered for games that didn't happen, that was a big thing. Is that they ended up donating all of it to local food banks. They were preparing meals for the
Mhm.
homeless and everything. Like in the arena, they were using it to as like a center for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And like in like this particular case, now they actually are just like, oh, we know exactly. This is one of the things where it's like they know exactly how to do this now. They're like, okay,
Mhm.
we have all this extra food that's going to go to waste, so let's get that
Yeah.
system back back and going again, and that's
and
good.
and let's do it in a way where we can, at least rebuild some faith in the local community that may have like doubted like how much we care about like their like them in general, because obviously there was a lot of worry that like, oh, the like all the talk before uh, Jim was fired was like, oh, do the owners even care what the fans think about their team or how it's run? Because they clearly didn't think anything of the banner. They thought it was like insulting to the guy instead of looking at the forest through the trees, you know, and
Yeah.
seeing like, oh, maybe the fans are upset because of all the losing that's been happening over 8 years and how bad this season's going so far. So rather than, you know, taking
They
a
were always on
stance
the
against the
defensive.
fans, they're kind of, yeah, they're kind of being proactive, which is
Yeah.
like a first in quite a long time for us. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, like for
And
your whole point about being a cynic, like I'm a huge cynic. Like you obviously heard me ranting about how a lot of this feels like just like we're trying to save the brand here. And a part of that probably is,
yeah,
but I
the
do
brand
believe
needs saving.
it is coming from a like a cynical PR point, but it's also probably coming from a general like Jim Rutherford being like, "Look, this is the basics. This is what the shit you need to be doing as an organization to regain the faith of your fandom or your
Yeah.
fan base, like to prove to them that you hear them out, you hear that and understand that what's been going on hasn't been good enough. The culture
Yeah.
that we've created isn't good enough, and we need to make it better."
This is the kind of culture that we have that will get us to building a winning team and that we will keep doing even when the team is doing well. Like one of those things where it's like, okay, we're not just doing this because it's like because the team is bad. We're doing this because this is how we want the franchise to be going forward every
Hmm.
day, whether they're 0-82 or 82-0. Like we want to
Yeah.
see them like holding themselves to that same kind of standard. And yeah, it's good. It's good in that regard for 100%, like for sure. I will like now as for Demko's equipment, which I could spend an hour talking about.
I'll
I
just
already
mute
wrote about
myself,
it
go for a
today.
nap, and
Yeah,
let you go off, King.
yeah, exactly. I wrote about it already today on Canucks Army. About how like I think the main reason he's bringing this out now is because it's the break and he gets a chance to break in some new gear. Which is because if you're not a goaltender, essentially any gear you're gonna get fresh out of the production line is gonna be kind of stiff. It's gonna need a
Mhm.
little bit of it's
Gotta
gonna
wear
need
'em in.
practices and drills to wear it down and to wear it and to break it all in. So I think Demko kind of saw this as an opportunity for him to like pull it out early because like notice he didn't have the jerseys or the pants or anything. He just had like the equipment itself. No one else was wearing any skate equipment. So it doesn't sound like it's coming in the very near future, just like
Mhm.
down the line. And he's kind of getting the gear prepped for that day, which again,
Yeah,
you normally
the
wouldn't
fact that
get.
he has the gear, right, is, like, kind of the telltale, like, oh,
Yeah.
like, he wouldn't just be buying retro skate gear for shits and gigs unless he really liked to practice with it, but, like,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
bought it because
Yeah.
they probably said, "You're gonna have a retro night at some point, make sure you get some time in there
Yeah.
where you break that shit in,
Yeah.
'cause you might not
Exactly.
have time during the year
God,
if,
that
a
that
bunch of
actually
games
might be
get
true.
shuffled around." Yeah.
That might be true. And God, it looks so gorgeous. It is so for anyone who hasn't seen it, it is quite literally an exact replica. Bo Horvat confirmed this as well today that it is an identical replica of the set that Kirk McLean wore in 1994. Everything from
Whew.
the mask to the glove. I as a goalie equipment nerd, I immediately was like, "Oh, this is Kirk McLean," like not just from the V's on the helmet across like the chin and the side, but also like there's something very iconic about McLean's glove where it has like the red and yellow accent on that outside. That's very specific to that 94 team. Like there's like that really iconic shot of him like snagging a puck like in midair against the Leafs in the conference finals that year, where you just see that glove out there. And like the throwback CCM logo on the all black pads. And you're like, oh, this is so cool. Like it's such a cool look. I don't think we've ever seen a Canuck goalie fully embrace like a throwback look before. Like in terms of,
No.
like we've seen them wear vintage gear, like vintage style gear, but this is straight up I wanted to replicate exactly what a goaltender looked like in 1994, essentially, right? Or like replicate the exact every last detail of a former goalie's gear, which is very cool. And I've been waiting for somebody to do that for a while, especially with McLean's gear. Like that's an iconic look as far as like Canucks lore is concerned. It's maybe not like the most well known outside of Vancouver, but here people know exactly whose mask that is and whose gear that is when they see it.
Yeah, like the mask for me was like the coolest part. Like I don't know why. It's just like, I mean, it's a dumb statement. Like obviously, like every single goalie rocks a white mask, but I don't know, the white with the yellow or something for some reason just looked so much different. Like the block work or the color block like look to it just looks so different than any mask you've seen before.
Yeah,
it's
you know what it is. A lot of masks nowadays, what is different about the way that they paint them and at least this is my interpretation of why I think the masks look different now. A lot of the masks essentially nowadays, obviously, like the full helmet is painted. Everything from like the back plate to like everything on the front, sometimes including the bars. A lot of 90s, a lot of older masks, they painted, but they always left the space where the cage overlaps with the mask blank, and that in itself creates a very different look. Like Mika Kiprasov's mask is the one that I always think of in that regard, where everything is painted like dark black and that flames like the skull on the mask and everything, except for like that edge or where the cage meets the actual helmet itself, and it looks so different. And it's just plain white. And McLean's mask kind of has that look to it. And yeah, it's a very iconic fit. I actually I very recently, ironically, I posted a graphic design template I had used to make a Kirk McLean style mask myself that I've wanted to do for my own goaltending, where it's the same thing, exactly the same as what Demko is wearing, only green and blue. And I'm like, and some people had commented on that. They're like, I want to see Demko wear this mask. It's so traditionally good looking and it's such a classic look. And I'm like, I think I played a little part in this. I did this. Even though this has totally been in the works for months, I did this. It looks great. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm just kind of, I'm looking at our running clock here, and I was like, you know what's funny? We started up our little conversation here. I'm like, we're gonna have nothing to talk about for hockey and hockey related things. It's just like the tangents that we somehow find ourselves on is really funny sometimes. And God bless Thatcher Demko for giving us something on this blessed day, on the day before. I mean, just looking at like whenever Richard Zussman or like Justin McElroy tweet that like the government's about to like have an announcement, you just know like everything is about to go to hell.
You're like, treasure these moments. If there's one thing we've
treasure
learned.
these precious moments and these memories, because otherwise it's all gonna go to hell. Otherwise, only other Canucks thing was Luke Shen apparently had like a tough go. He had the Omicron thing and was like keeled over at one point at practice and had to tough it out, according to Ben Kuzma. But of course, Bo Horvat, the captain, was very polite about it. Said, "Yeah, it's good to have Shen back. You know, look good out there. Look really."
I mean,
really good,
you're like, I don't blame. Of course you are. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, that after a guy comes back from
that
Omicron, you're going
teammate
to be
looked
like,
like shit.
that guy, wow, that wuss really needs to toughen up. Like, no, let the poor guy keel over a little bit. This isn't poor Oli Ulevi in his case at training camp where he was not prepared for the bag skate. Oh, that's the other thing. We've seen the last of the Travis Green bag skates. I didn't even factor that in.
Maybe
I mean,
that's why everyone did bad, was because they had to do the bag skates.
it's
If they didn't
that
have the
one bag
bag
skates
skates,
put them behind the 8 ball for the rest of the year.
yep, that's all it was. The bag skate was so tough that it ruined all of them, and that's the only reason they were bad this year.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the only reason.
that'd be really funny if like that's all it was, is just like they were all tired.
They were
Like,
just
something
all,
like really
they
pathetic.
were just, you know,
They were just all out of shape.
there's like an oral history, like at the end of the season when the Canucks have won the Stanley Cup, won the 2022 Stanley Cup, talking about how in the first part of the year, like you're gonna get like you'll get like Brock Besser being like, well, Mercury was in retrograde. It just wasn't our time. You know, we had
All
it
the
hadn't
hockey
like
cliches.
yeah, all the hockey cliches, and then you just throw in like something like, "Oh, and a witch cursed us." Like,
Oh yeah, we also I knocked over a tombstone over the summer accidentally, and it
yes,
fell on an Indian burial ground.
yeah,
Sorry everybody, I did my best, but it's not my fault.
yeah. It's just like something like straight out of Treehouse of Horror. Oh God, Elias. When we got back, to training camp, we were saying hi to everybody. Elias showed us this monkey's paw that he just happened to pick up on his vacation.
And all the fingers were closed
They're like,
already. And
oh,
everyone's
like,
like,
yeah, like,
Elias, what'd you wish for? And he's like, I cannot tell you,
yeah,
but
yeah.
trust me, it worked out really good for
I
me.
want a turkey sandwich on rye bread. The turkey's a little dry. It's just something like straight out. It's yeah, exactly.
Something.
It's just like
Oh, that's what he wished for. He wished for, I wish for my wrist to be okay. Then he wished for
a contract to get done. To get
his
done.
contract to get done, and then he
It
wished
didn't get done. Yeah.
for a stick that he can rely on this year. The problem was he didn't wish for the right stick, and Bauer sent him the wrong one, which threw
That
off
was
everything.
that was something I wrote about yesterday on my
Yeah,
Canucks Christmas wish list article, where I was talking about like, well, this is one that he technically already got, but literally Pedersen started the entire year using a stiffer, longer version of like stick simply because in the summer he had been sent a version of his original sticks, or in what were supposed to be his usual sticks, but were in fact an error, like an incorrectly made batch essentially. So
hmm
it kind of it was in a like placebo sort of way. It made him think that he had accidentally he had gotten a lot like stronger and needed like a stronger flex on the blade essentially, because
yeah,
it felt uncomfortable. And then he realized that he still had like an old batch, like from original batch, sitting around, and was like, oh wait, this feels completely different than the first one, or the
yeah.
stiff ones I'm using now. And suddenly he's looking a lot better and a lot more comfortable skating wise.
I thought that was like a bit surreal too when he kind of dropped the nugget that like, oh, by the way, I was using a different stick all year that I wasn't like used to, and I was like, oh, usually when you hear those stories, like it's usually because it's a bad thing. Like I'm surprised he didn't tell people earlier, like the first week of the season, where he's like, yeah, I got stuck with a stick that I'm not usually used to, and because I didn't have a normal training camp, like it's been tough for me to adjust to the longer stick. Like you'd think
Yeah.
in his early struggles, when it was like the first few games, it looked like he looked really, really bad. You think he'd be like immediately trying to balance that, but I guess maybe he was trying to be polite to Bauer because they sponsor him, so he was trying to not throw him under the bus for making him look like shit.
Making him a bad batch initially, that turned into him getting a completely different set of sticks that didn't because he thought the old ones didn't work for him anymore, only to find out that
Yeah,
first batch was incorrectly made. Apparently that's happened, and that's happened before with other players. Like I think Austin Matthews switched from Bauer to a different company after they messed up on his sticks as well. So it's
maybe.
happened. before.
Maybe this is just a giant conspiracy. The baseball thing, the juiced balls.
Oh
Maybe it's
yeah,
the
we
same
didn't
thing.
talk about that on this show. The whole thing
Maybe
where
it's
the
the
MLB
juice
was
sticks.
juice sticks,
They need,
but it just makes everyone worse.
but like that's the thing. They're like, oh no, Elias Pettersson is going to get paid. We can't have him be a superstar. We're going to need to fix this a bit. So let's send him some sticks
Because
that
they didn't want to
suck
pay
and
him
don't
more
work.
money to
They
promote
don't
them.
want to pay him no money. Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
Cody, I
trust me,
think
it
there's
all
some
works out.
flaws. I think there's some flaws in your logic here. Your tinfoil hat is kind
Look,
of
okay,
dangling a little bit there.
my tinfoil supply is perfectly fine, and I'm telling you, this conspiracy theory makes complete sense.
Yeah. The stick thing is funny. Like, it's funny looking back on the games that I went to see or like that I saw in person. Cause I feel like, again, like the difference between watching hockey on TV and watching it in person is like so different. You pick
Completely
up on
different.
a lot more intricate like
Mhm.
details and whatnot. Like, I'm just thinking
It
back
almost
to
seems
like,
like a slower game when you're in person. Like you can pick up on way more when you're in person versus live.
yeah,
Or sorry, yeah, in person versus TV.
players are bigger, the puck is more noticeable, like, everything seems to be, like, the ice is, like, almost, like, whiter in person,
Mhm.
like, it's that idea of, like, you can kind of see every detail a little bit better, and, like, there are times, like, I'm looking back on the games that I went to before all of this, like, all the shutdowns and everything with, like where all of which were before Boudreaux took over, so, like, the Stars game, the Flyers game, like,
Mhm.
thinking back to, like, the times where I'm, like where I would watch a pass go right to Pettersson's blade and it would bobble and it would flip and he wouldn't be able to catch passes cleanly. And I'm just thinking back, I'm like, wow, it took a lot. In a way, it's like almost like one of those things where like I know it's not my hockey stick and I'm not like an expert on players on skater gear anyway. But I'm like, why didn't we all notice before that the stick was different and weird and it wasn't working? Like,
Yeah.
because I'm just thinking back to it like now, I'm like, oh my God, I can count like multiple times where a completely normal pass would just flutter right off of his blade or he'd whiff on something that is completely unusual for Elias Pettersson to be whiffing on. And now I'm like, oh, it all adds up why it took him such a while to get going. Cause like, obviously great players can do well even with equipment that's not perfect for them, but it can make all the difference in those cases when you're using like a stick that doesn't work or skates that are too tight or that kind of thing. Like it can all make a difference in impact how you play. So when you got feeling comfortable is very important when you're using that stuff as much as NHL players are. So yeah, Pettersson's looked a lot more comfortable in the last few games where he has the original sticks again.
Mhm.
And yeah, so hopefully that kind of just ends up being literally like we look back at the end of the season like, oh, so it literally was just the stick. That was the
That's
whole
all it
reason.
was. It took
Uh,
just one teeny tiny fix and everything sorted itself out.
yeah,
Who knew?
yeah.
But
The stick lift. We got the Boudreaux boost and the stick lift.
there's the episode title right there. The Boudreaux boost and the stick lift.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. If I wasn't planning on already giving us like a Christmas themed title, I can.
Yeah.
We can squeeze it in.
Yeah, obviously we're pretty maxed out on the hockey content. Let's talk some Christmas because obviously this is gonna be our last episode during the Christmas break.
Yeah.
We need to rate a series that we were talking about before we kind of got off topic and started talking about hockey stuff. Back to our original conversation that sparked this entire episode to begin with, A Christmas Carol, because I don't know about you, but I've seen 4 different versions of The Christmas Carol. There's the Robert Zemeckis Ultra CGI Nightmare version.
Okay.
There's the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Mhm.
There's the the 60s or 70s one that's in color, I believe. And then I think
There's definitely like a
there's one in
Disney
like
one.
the 30s or the 40s starring like Alistair Sim or something. But there's 4 that I've seen, and then I'm pretty sure there's another one I'm missing that you're saying that Disney definitely made.
Like You can count basically every single, like, TV show or, like, any series that's had a long enough run to do, like, a Christmas episode has probably done Christmas Carol at some
Yeah.
point or every show has the "I wish I'd never been, born" sorta thing or, like, the "I'm gonna show you your future," like,
Mm.
either It's a Wonderful Life or, Christmas
Oh, Mickey's
Carol.
Christmas Carol too, right.
That's the one
There's
I'm
a
thinking
lot
of.
of
Is
them,
is that
okay.
the one that's the one where it's like that's the one that introduces, I guess, like, Scrooge McDuck, right? Like, if
I think
unless
so.
I'm mistaken.
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, because that would make sense in terms of obviously where that name came from and, like, everything else, right?
Mhm.
Because and then the Huey, Louie, and Dewey. New DuckTales, by the way, is very good, on a completely unrelated note. But, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, Doctor Who had a Christmas Carol special that was literally just a Christmas Carol, but, like, looked like
Blackadder
an alien.
Have you ever seen the Blackadder, Christmas Carol? It's really good because instead of
Maybe.
it's about how Blackadder because the whole okay, so for anyone who doesn't know Blackadder, it's a series with, Rowan Atkinson, where, he's essentially just, like, playing different, like, generational versions of the Blackadder family, of, like, the same Edmund Blackadder in different, like, eras and whatnot, and he's always
Mhm.
like this just like conniving guy who's always trying to like get out of work and like trying to find ways to essentially like manipulate people into doing what he wants sort of thing. And their version of Christmas Carol is about a version of Blackadder where he is like the nicest man in town, and then the ghost of Christmas past accidentally shows him that all of his ancestors were really successful and rich by like manipulating everybody, so he turns
Yeah.
into a huge jerk. It's supposed to be like,
Like
no,
the
no,
reverse, the
and the ghost
inverse?
is the inverse, and the ghost is like, no, no, I'm sorry, that was the wrong thing. He's like, no, I'm learned that I'm being a push that I'm getting taken advantage of by people, so now I'm gonna be a jerk
That
and
rocks.
get what I want. It's
That's
really good.
amazing.
That whole series is gold. Yeah, and that in particular, and there's some names in that show in that series, like Hugh Laurie's in it, Jim Broadbent, just like a whole list of like basically every like British actor of like the 70s and of like the 80s is in there
Right.
somewhere. Miranda
Fair.
Richardson, it's really good. But the best Christmas Carol, and frankly, maybe the best Christmas movie of all time, in my opinion, is
Mm,
Muppets Christmas Carol. It is so good. It
interesting. For me, number 1 Christmas movie of all time is Christmas Vacation, like, can't be beat. I
really
haven't I
okay.
haven't seen Muppets Christmas Carol since I was, like, 8 or 9, and I remember really loving it at the time, but I have not watched it since, interestingly enough, because I'm a big every, like, Christmas, season watching, like, The Usual Suspects, like, every not the movie,
What's
The
your
Usual
lineup? What's your
Suspects,
starting
but, like,
lineup here? What?
um, so I have, like, 9 or 10, maybe
Okay.
12 even. Last year, I
Uh,
didn't do it because, obviously, Christmas got canceled, so it was, like, kinda miserable to watch holiday movies and, like, the usual traditions because it just felt
mhm.
like it wasn't the same. But
Okay.
usually it's Christmas Vacations on the 25th, 24th is It's a Wonderful Life or The Bishop's Wife, which is a wonderful movie that doesn't really get talked about a lot,
I've
but it stars
never even heard of that.
it's
Okay.
like a 1940 or 1950s movie starring, Cary Grant, and
Oh, wow.
it's basically kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, but it's just about this miserable pastor guy whose wife is, like, really upset with him for being such a bah humbug type of dude on Christmas, and so
Mhm.
Cary Grant comes down, beautiful Cary Grant, and he's an angel, and he basically just starts influencing the people around the pastor and to try to get him to, like, lighten up and, like, enjoy Christmas in his life a bit more. It's really
Mm.
great. It's just so wonderful. And besides those 3, then it's the Die Hard, Die
Yeah,
Hard
okay.
2, even though Die Hard 2 isn't really Christmassy, besides like the last line of the movie where the guy's like, "Hey, Merry Christmas." Like, but other than that,
Yeah.
has nothing to do with Christmas
I mean,
at
to be
all.
fair, neither really does the first movie either, but,
Well,
like,
it's a
the first movie
Christmas
has
party, and
that
he
one
says
makes
ho
that one
ho
has a
ho. But
little bit more but, like,
it is
yeah,
hard to set a movie in Los Angeles and make it a Christmas movie because it
because it
does
doesn't
not
snow.
snow in California. So it's
Yeah,
like really
no.
hard to be like, it's Christmas when there's no snow.
Yeah,
Um,
like, Iron Man 3 technically takes place around Christmas too, but,
yeah, a
like,
lot of
it's not snowing in most of that movie, so it's like you don't
yeah,
it doesn't factor in.
yeah. What I'm trying to think what else. I on actually on Christmas Eve, so like the 23rd. because that's like Roxy and I's like Christmas Eve, because Christmas Eve we spend it with her family for a big dinner, and then Christmas Day is with my family. So Christmas Eve is like our day together,
Oh,
and
that's very
on
nice.
that day, I'll wrap all the gifts while we watch the original Star Wars trilogy, like on VHS. The
Yes,
Star
there we
Wars, Empire
go.
Strikes
Oh,
Back,
on
Return of the Jedi.
VHS.
Oh yeah,
Get
I still got a
out.
working VHS, and I still
Hell
got the
yes.
VHSs like kicking around
Are-
somehow.
That's
They're a
awesome.
little worn out from decades and decades of being used, but
Yeah.
they hold up pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to think like, oh, and then of course like all the Grinches. So like How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the original animated version, all those original animated like cartoons like the Snowman,
Right. Those are all,
Rudolph, like all them shits.
yeah. In a way,
Oh,
those are,
and Peanuts.
and the Peanuts. Yeah, I feel like like the Christmas specials for sure. Like I almost put those in two separate categories, like the movies and like the specials, just because
Mhm.
I think the specials within themselves are like very interchangeable. Like they're all like in terms of like they're all really good for what they are. And I'm always like, oh, I could watch these any day of the week almost like during the Christmas season.
Right.
Whereas like with the movies, it's a little bit more like, oh, these are the good ones. These are the ones that I'm not as big a fan of. Like, whereas like if somebody's like, oh, I'm gonna put on Frosty the Snowman, I'm like, oh hell yeah.
Mhm.
Let's like you're never gonna be in like upset watching one of those. Like do you have a favorite out of like because the old like Rankin Bass ones, those are like all the stop motion ones, and then
Mhm.
the Peanuts one is its own kind of thing. Is there like which is the good, which is the like the we'll do, you know what we'll do it puck soup style. We'll do this overrated, underrated, best worst. So like
Okay.
kind of like
Here,
so pull up the
Bass
list here. Yeah, pull up the list
Christmas
here.
specials.
I can go immediately on I think the over or on underrated. I'll start with my underrated
Mm.
one. The most
Okay, I got 'em
underrated
all.
of the Rankin Bass ones is A Year Without a Santa Claus. Specifically for the reasoning of the Miser brothers in that one
Okay.
are iconic. They're so good. Like
So you're saying that's the most underrated?
yeah, I'm not saying it's the best one. I'm saying it's the
Mhm,
most
mhm.
underrated out of the group because it's not
It's
say
never like it's
Santa
never
Claus is
anyone's
Coming
like
to Town.
first pick or whatever.
No, yeah, it's
Yeah.
all because the first pick's always what? It's gonna be Rudolph,
It's usually
Santa
that
Claus,
or
Frosty.
Frosty, right?
Yeah, it's those are like the big three. And yeah, like Year Without a Santa Claus is one of those ones that came like later on, but it's really good. It's a really the story's kind is funny. It's got a lot of Elvis songs in there for some reason, but like
Yeah,
again,
naturally.
the highlight of it is are the Miser Brothers and their whole like song, their whole like Miser Brothers song that they do. It's so iconic and funny, and the like all the different puns they make, how they're both basically like stepkids of like Mother Nature. It's very
Mhm.
good. It's like it's the best. They're like my two of my favorite Christmas characters for sure.
Um, I don't want to just like agree with you because I do like that one quite a bit. Um, I guess to be different, I'll say Santa Claus is Coming to Town is the most
Really?
underrated. Yeah,
Okay.
I like it quite a bit. I think there's just a bit more variety to it. Um, Rudolph probably the most overrated. It's the most
Yeah.
iconic, I think, because it's like the one that everyone remembers is little animated claymated Rudolph and his stupid nose lighting up. Like I get it, but for me, I don't know. All
It's one of the
right.
ones that like it's
It's
good
almost like it's
because it's
played out.
old. It's good
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
old. Like that's what like it's definitely one of the movies where it's like as a kid, oh yeah, that was your favorite. Like
Mm,
Rudolph the
mhm.
Red-Nosed Reindeer was absolutely your favorite as a kid. But
Yeah,
like as you get older, you start to appreciate the other ones a lot
yeah.
more.
And
Um
you start to think, Rudolph's kind of an entitled little bitch. And
I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some great characters. I think I would agree with you on overrated on that one for sure. Like don't get me wrong, like there's some great iconic characters like Yukon Cornelius within
yeah,
himself is
for
just an
sure.
iconic character. I do think the whole thing of like Hermie the elf is like, oh, I want to be a dentist. Like
Yeah.
that's a little bit like actually like that's actually kind of funny. Like
Mhm.
there's some good bits in there. but then there's also like the whole thing of like, why is there this lion that's a king? What does this have to do with Christmas?
Don't worry about it.
There's another one that's like that, like, or oh, you know what? Maybe we'll get to that if we talk about just like the movie, like general movies.
Mhm.
But like there are some other movies that I think I'm always like, I'm always laughing like this movie's a Christmas movie, but like it actually has like zero to do with Christmas at the end of the day.
Like
Um,
which? Let's move
like
right into it.
okay,
I'm
okay,
curious.
okay. White Christmas, the Irving Berlin movie, has jack shit to do with Christmas. It has what literally the only parts of it that have to do with Christmas in the entire movie is at the beginning when it's Christmas Eve on like in like World War One and Bing Crosby is singing White Christmas. And then at
Mhm.
the end, when they do the Christmas like White Christmas again, and
Yeah. The reprise.
literally the rest of the movie, there's no like they'll say like, oh, but it's almost the 24th, Christmas Eve. Like, other than that, there's nothing about it that actually has anything to do with Christmas. The rest of it is just about Hollywood and like putting on a big old production. Like, and it's just Danny Kaye being Danny Kaye, and
Just
then
tap dancing with Danny fucking K.
yeah, like it's like, don't get me wrong, it's an interesting, like it's an entertaining movie. I'm just always like, for a movie that's called White Christmas, there's literally nothing about this movie that has anything to do with Christmas outside the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's all in all, like I think I would put that, maybe this is just because my mom loves White Christmas and she insists on watching it every Christmas day, but that to me
Yeah.
is like one of the most overrated Christmas movies. Sorry,
See,
mom.
that I totally understand that because my family, like my dad's side of the family, loves Christmas Vacation. Like every single year, whenever we would go up to Calgary to go visit his side of the family for Christmas, you could not have a single conversation without someone quoting Christmas Vacation. Every single dinner for like a week straight, because like obviously you're always hanging out, going out to dinner, you're making dinners, whatever, leading up to Christmas. So every single dinner, someone would do the speech from the ant where they finish off with, you know, the Pledge of Allegiance, and then someone
Nice.
at some point, even though like
In
it comes
Calgary.
later in the movie, at the end of the movie, or at the end of like the someone making the speech, everyone laughs, everyone quiets down, then someone would just be like, play ball. Like everyone loses their minds. And it would happen every single fucking dinner, every meal, basically, for a
For
week
the
straight.
entire week,
The
yeah.
entire week. And it would never get
Breakfast,
old
same thing, yeah.
for like years and years and years and years. And that tradition is carried on to even like just like my family carrying on Christmas dinners as an adult until now. And so in theory, Christmas Vacation should be completely worn out for me. Like I should have no appreciation of it. I think it's like completely overrated, but I find it so fucking terribly funny that I can actually like override my brain and tell my brain like, nope, you're going to appreciate it no matter what, even though you have no reason to.
Yeah.
So it's both my most overrated movie, my favorite movie, the most unfunny movie now. It's all of the above.
It is one of those Christmas movies that hasn't aged very well, for a lot of reasons. Chevy Chase just being one of them himself.
Yeah,
But
it
like,
is genuinely like as a community fan, it's really hard to rewatch Christmas Vacation and know like all the terrible things people have said about him just being like a complete asshole,
yeah,
like a sexist, a homophobe, a
like literally
racist,
just
like
being
just
Pierce
all these
Hawthorne
horrible, yeah, exactly. Like his character Pierce Hawthorne isn't
is
really a
literally based
character.
on
It's
him.
literally just
And
Chevy Chase. And then you
and
watch
that's why
this.
people got mad. And that's why he got mad about it, was because it was literally just him. Like it was
Mhm.
literally just the writers were just writing based off of him, Chevy
Like
Chase. Like,
they
yeah.
even have the my old man or stuff my old man says or whatever, which was like a joke based on another Twitter account, which like almost is like 3 layers of meta because it's all just making fun of Chevy Chase being terrible on set and then making fun of him by making fun of the things that make fun. Like,
Yeah.
show's fucking awesome.
I
This
will,
is an ad for Community, by the way, guys.
this is an ad for Community. Often we've talked about just turning this into a community podcast.
And the community Christmas specials are fucking awesome.
Oh, that's right. Abed's
The one where they
Uncontrollable
join
Christmas.
the one where they
Yes.
join the acapella group and they send up Glee. One of my favorite
Fantastic.
episodes of all time.
It's
The
so good.
claymation one is so stupid and so funny. Like,
oh God,
yeah,
Britta's in
bless
this?
that show. Oh God, Britta's in this is like one of my favorite lines. It is so good.
And
the
as
guy from
somebody who-
SNL,
Yeah.
what's his name?
Taron Killam,
Taron Killam
who's
is
married
so
to Kobe Smulders in real life.
oh, good for him.
Yeah,
He has that
Vancouverite.
one joke where he's like, I don't know, Abed's like, we're like, after this, it's going to be over, right? And he's like, no, this is what we do. This is who we are now.
Our
And
soup's
he like,
going to regionals, guys.
and he like grabs his shoulders and he gives him this like really creepy, intense look. And it's like my favorite bit of acting I've ever seen because it's so over the top. And
Yeah.
Abed plays it perfectly where he's like eyes wide, like, oh God, what have I done?
Yeah. The
Pure
whole
magic.
baby boomer Santa bit with him and Donald Glover
Ugh.
is incredible. Like
It is an
again,
incredible piece of acting.
imagine having a show where you're literally like, "Oh, cool, we can get Childish Gambino to sing some songs for us before he was Childish Gambino." Incredible.
A multi-genre song that's basically about like just trying to goad an old man into joining a stupid a cappella singing group.
Yeah.
It's
The
so
whole- that-
dumb.
Yeah, as someone who never watched Glee for obvious reasons, it looks terrible. Apparently, like it's weirder than I anticipated. Like I've seen some like bits where people are like, this was an actual plot to a Glee episode. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
actually would have watched this now. Like want to watch this now. Like just
No,
in terms of how
Glee's-
terrible it was.
Glee is very bizarre and kind of like the Chevy Chase thing. It's
Not aged well.
it does not age well, and there's a lot of things they were trying to do to be very progressive, which I don't think age well either.
Yeah, it just turned out to be even more offensive, like because
Yeah. And I mean, if you just look at the cast list and some like what's happened to the actors like since leaving the show, it's like one of those like, oh God, it's just like nothing but tragedy. Like the
Yeah.
lead actress is like was apparently
Like, it
a
turns-
Chevy Chase of the Glee show. She was like
It-
a monster to everybody.
the girl playing a massive like psychological bully on the show turned out to be terrible in real life. What a shock.
No, no. The thing is, well, this is depressing.
Wasn't her
now.
character supposed to be like awful? Like wasn't her character
No,
like
so the bully character who was the leader of like the Mean Girls clique, she drowned on like a lake with her
Oh,
kid. Like
that's
in the
right.
boat.
God. Wow.
But she was like apparently like a decently nice person. The lead actress of the show, who
Leah
was like
Michele.
the I don't know, like the ditzy, like I'm an innocent schoolgirl, golly gee type actress, was like
it's my first year. I'm a freshman.
Yes,
And it's
and
all about me.
I'm
Show's about me.
dorky and I'm not attractive, but then I'm gonna have that glow up after a season where I turn into like a hot babe.
I wear
She
glasses
was
like
a
a nerd.
huge
Yeah.
C word. Apparently, there was like one girl who like featured in like the final season, and she like bullied her for being new and like getting in her way on like set and stuff. So she was just like a
Yeah.
horrible person the entire time. There is the one actor dude who obviously the
Corey
Canadian
Monteith.
kid
Yeah, Corey Monteith.
passed
He's
away
from
of an
Vancouver.
overdose, like which is
And it happened
terrible.
in Vancouver, which at the Fairmont downtown,
yeah.
the Cole Harbor. And he's
And then
like
there's
big Canucks fan too, as well. Like
Yeah.
well known.
And then of course there's the other male actor from the show who was going to go to jail for
Jesus
certain pornographic charges involving
God.
children, and he killed himself when
Oh my
facing
God.
said charges.
Why did we
So,
go
like-
into this? I didn't end up. It was a mistake bringing up Glee. Oh
Yeah,
man.
well, this is what I was
That
trying to
was-
say. Like, it's one of those like weirdly tragic shows that has a lot of problematic stuff
Yeah.
on film, and outside of it too is like all
Yeah.
like even infinitely worse. So do
Yeah.
yourself a favor. Don't watch Glee, everybody. Check out Community. Community is a
Yeah,
wonderful
watch
show.
watch
Really
Community
easy
sing
to
a cappella right
digest.
at- yeah,
Just
right
watch
at
the
that same time.
Christmas episodes, and if you like, here, okay, total off topic before we go off the rails. We're already like an hour and a half of like off the rails nonsense.
Yeah, we haven't
We'll
even
wrap
finished
up.
getting into movie stuff. We haven't
Yeah,
even
no,
finished
like-
our Christmas movies yet.
We'll wrap up this TV talk, and then we'll quickly wrap up with some more Christmas movie talk, and then we'll move on. But if you were going to introduce someone to Community with one episode, which one would it be to try and sell them on the show?
So, oh man. So, the show, well, like, here's the thing, like, one of the episodes that I would have used is probably one that you would have used too, which is the Dungeons and Dragons episode, but that's
Yes, sir.
technically gone because of
Because people don't understand the drow
yeah, it's a little
costume,
now
which
it's
is
one of those weird gray areas where you're kind of like on one hand, but also you could have probably just edited that part out somewhat and kept the rest of the show because it's fine. Like
or,
it's one of the,
or like refilmed it or
yeah, you could
something.
reshoot part of it and the rest of the episode is totally fine.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird ones. I guess
It's one of those ones where it's like it's clearly someone was scrubbing through the show and saw it and was like, "Oh, this is just blackface." When it's like, no, like in the context of the show, he's portraying a character from lore of Dungeons and Dragons, which is
right.
considered a dark
And
elf. He's not,
and they address that that
and they
fact in the
address it
show.
immediately with the joke where he's like, "I'm a drow." Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, yeah, like I would go into that whole thing, but also as like straight white guys, I'm like, it's probably like it's not our call at the end of the day. Like, you know, it's not really
Yeah,
our
fair
call.
enough.
It's if it's offensive or not, at the end of the day. But like, there's that episode minus that part. Like, I could see like being
It's
something.
genuinely pure, like one
It's
of the
very good.
funniest things
It's
ever.
yeah,
It's
it's
so
very
good.
well done. That one, like, any of like there's like the Halloween episode where like the zombies. Oh well, God, I'm forgetting
Yeah.
the paintball episodes. Like
Paintball episodes are a good
that's key.
introducer.
Specifically, like I think the one where it turns it starts as like a Western and then turns into Star Wars. Like that 2-parter one is very good. Also the one with like where they go on the simulator, where they go on the rocket simulator. That's a
Yeah.
huge spot. That's a huge like KFC sponsor. One of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
cases where they did a really good job of like this was clearly like Community clearly got
They
sponsored by
got like an ad
KFC.
space filled and they were like, how do we make fun of like how ridiculous this sponsor is?
How overly sponsored this is, and they just do
Yeah.
it by being like, all right, make sure our seven herbs and spices are ready, are charged and ready. like I'm Colonel. Hello, I'm your AI Colonel.
Pierce, you're gonna die. What?
It's
What
all
did he
so
say?
good. They're just trapped in a giant like bucket, like chicken bucket, basically. It's very good. Make sure your knobs are set from tender to crispy. Like it's so good. That's probably it for me. What about you?
Yeah, for sure. D&D episode's great. The one where Jeff, I think that's also a Christmas episode technically, where Jeff's gonna get in a fight in the first season, and he's like, I don't want to fight on Christmas, and they're like, it's
Oh
like
yeah.
December 10th or whatever. It's like not even
Oh,
close to Christmas, but it's like the joke of that's when the air date was, and yeah, there's something funny about them like fighting a bunch of shirtless dudes, and I think it's like Britta's just like, come on, this is a joke, right? And it's like a bunch of like beefcakes like doing acrobatics and martial arts.
yeah.
Something really funny about that. So yeah, I'd introduce them to that. Paintball episodes, of course, like I mean, every person knows Star Wars or like Western references, so like it's pretty hard to not know what they're doing with that stuff.
Yeah.
The D&D is a little niche, but it's like just so funny. Like
Yeah, that was
it's
just
hard to
clearly
not
made
find it funny.
because TV writers are giant nerds. Like
Yeah.
that's why the D&D episode got made. The
Yeah.
paintball one was just an homage to like every good like shooter movie and getting to do that for a full episode and just
As
being
I'm
like, this is it. This is this show now.
as I'm recording the episode, Roxy is texting me the lyrics to the Taron Killam Glee song. He's like, Glee.
Glee. Yeah, like the whole just like the Britta turning the corner, Jeff's there.
Yeah. He's off key and it's just terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all good.
Check it out,
Okay,
folks.
Christmas movies. So this turned because Chevy Chase turned into like National
Mhm.
Lampoon talk. I will say, like, National Lampoon is one of those movies that I never got into specifically, maybe because I came into it a lot later than most people.
Fair.
Like, it's not one that we watched it with my
Yeah,
family.
because when I grew up, like when I was born, I was only, I think the movie's only like 2 years old at that point because I think it
Mhm,
came out in 88,
mhm.
1989. So it'd only been out for a year
Mm,
when I was born. So like I was
okay.
basically like growing up with it becoming like an institutional movie that had to be watched every year.
See, yeah. So, like, for me, there was never one at my house. And nowadays, I will say I'm one of those people that, like, when it comes to movies, like, the ones where it kind of just turns into like a Rube Goldberg, like, in terms of like everything going wrong, like, and like, just like in that very slapstick way, those
Mhm.
stress me out. So, like, when I watch National Lampoon, it just stresses me out, right? Because it's always like it's like either like the clear miscommunication, or the, oh, that tree is gonna fall over and set everything on fire, or like, and it just turns into the whole, like, yeah, Rube Goldberg machine of everything falling apart, everything breaking. Those movies stress me out. Like, one of the most stressful movies I've ever seen is that movie The Money Pit with Tom Hanks. I cannot watch that movie.
Oh,
It
okay.
bothers it just drives nuts. Uh, but yeah, so, like, I'm not a big National Lampoon guy, but I guess the movie for me that kind of falls in that same category of, like, I've watched this so many times it shouldn't be funny anymore,
Right.
is Elf, like, with Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
I love that movie. Like, I love that movie. Every year I watch that movie, it's never not funny. Like,
Mhm.
everything, it's one of those things where, like, it was such good casting all around. There were,
It
like,
was
little
it was lightning in a bottle, if you
it was
will.
it was lightning in a bottle. And what's hilarious in hindsight is that movie is directed by Jon Favreau, who went on
Who
to, of course, direct
who
all
basically
the Iron Man
kickstarted the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe by
movies.
capturing lightning in a bottle with Robert Downey Jr. as
Yep,
Iron Man.
and then did it again with Pedro Pascal with The Mandalorian. So he's real, like,
He's
God,
a
like, the guy,
Kickstarter, if you will.
he's fantastic at that stuff. Like, yeah, he's like, I'd probably put him up there as, like, my favorite director at this point, like, considering how many of my favorite movies he had a hand in making.
Fair.
And yeah, all the casting is really good. James Caan, playing like the straight man, like, it works so well in that movie. It's both
Mhm.
really funny and really heartfelt. Yeah, there's so many things about it that are just really, really good. And, like, yeah,
You've
looking
seen it
back on
so
it,
much that you shouldn't appreciate it anymore, you should be tired of it, but
yeah,
it's just such a good, wholesome,
yeah.
fun movie, you can't not appreciate it.
Yeah, like, there are just so many bits in it that are like, yeah, it's still so funny, like, the raccoon, like, him just going up to the raccoon, I'm like, "Does somebody
Yeah.
wanna hug?" Like, and it's so good.
He just
And
immediately attacks him. Hell yeah.
yeah, like, the whole thing, like, him always, like, retelling the story of, like, how he got to New York is like, it's like, "Past the sea of swirly, twirly gumdrops, and then I walked through the Lincoln Tunnel," and, like, it's just such a good bit. And then, of course, like, the fact that half of it is filmed in Vancouver is really good. Like,
Yeah.
you'll be like, "Oh, wait, that's not downtown New York, that's the
Yeah.
Bay on Robson,"
Yeah.
like,
I
all of it.
recognize all of these places. I guess I've also been to New York.
Yeah, I mean, God, how many times has Vancouver been New York in a movie? Like
So many.
like,
Every
the
single
Pacific
not
Coli
Marvel movie, but every DC movie, at
yeah.
least, pretends that Gotham is like some sprawling metropolis, and it's just like, "Oh,
Oh,
nope,
wait.
there's a there's the,
Madison
art gallery."
Yeah, the Pacific Coliseum has filled in for Madison Square Garden in so many different movies. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
like, it happens all the time. Yeah, Elf has gotta be up there. It's so good. Will Ferrell as Buddy the Elf is just great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's wonderful.
yeah.
Um, Otherwise, I don't know. Do you wanna wrap it up there before, we, convince people to never listen to us ever again because we're just a bunch of
You know what?
nonsense?
This is more like, you know what? This is kind of what our show kind of delved, like, I think, like, this year in particular, we've had a lot of cases where we've ended up just going full all in on hockey. And we're normally, our show is kind of supposed to be a little bit more of a little bit of this and a little bit of with hockey stuff, with hockey being
Yeah.
the forefront and then coming
Usually
into some pop culture
usually
later.
when a team is good, we can talk about random shit like this in the middle of a game recap because they're good, and there's not much to say about a team that's playing
Yeah.
well and doing well and
Yeah.
succeeding.
We're not dead inside. Like, it's not killing our
Yeah,
interest
yeah.
in everything else as an aside.
Yeah, it's nice to bring up random stuff
Yeah.
because you're enjoying the hockey rather than you bringing up good stuff to, convince yourself,
Yeah.
that it's not all bleak and miserable.
Yeah. I did wanna shout out Muppet Christmas Carol before we went,
I might
because
I
that
might legitimately watch that as soon as we hang
you
up here.
really should. But, like, I'm sure, like, okay, so there's quite a few Muppet people in the Canuck Twitter verse. Justin Morissette is one, Jackson McDonald is another. I'm sure they will back me up on this. It's such a good movie for a variety of reasons, but specifically the best part about it, like, as what makes you appreciate it as an adult is not just the fact that it's, like, really well done and really well written, is the fact that, like, they have Michael Caine playing Scrooge, but he's playing it straight. He's not playing it like he's not playing it like he's around a bunch of Muppets. He's playing
Mhm.
it
He's playing
as
it
if he
completely
were on
straight as if
stage.
he's
Yeah.
with, like, other actors.
Yeah, and it's incredible, and it so seamlessly fits in. It's fantastic. It makes,
Mhm.
like, the Muppets are one of those things that are at their best when people aren't treating them like they're Muppets. They're treating them just like they're a normal thing that they'd see
Yeah.
on the, like, some of the best Muppet bits are when people are are just like, "Oh," it's like they see this frog talking and they're like, "Yeah, that seems like that sounds about right." Like, they don't even, like, it doesn't even click into their head. They're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, why?" They're like, it's not even weird to them. They're like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Like,
Yeah. Okay, sure.
it works so well whenever, like, they just play it straight with Muppets around them. It's like, "Oh, hey, frog, telephone for you." It works so well.
Yeah.
And yeah, that whole Muppet Christmas Carol, I think, is the best version. They do really well. Like, Gonzo as Charles Dickens is
Mhm.
really, like, telling the story works really well.
And the 3 old dudes as the, ghosts
Oh
of,
yeah,
whatever.
Statler and Waldorf as Marley and Marley.
Yeah.
That song is really good too. Like, that's one of the better songs in that movie, I think. It might be the best one.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's all gold. Like, like, the bits they do with, like, Sam the Eagle are really good. Rizzo, yeah, that one holds up super well. Especially considering it's the first movie after Jim Henson had passed away. They did a really good job despite him not being there. And then I guess, yeah, the last thing I would throw in, like, I guess, like, want to talk about is, like, okay, we talked about food during Thanksgiving. I don't know if we talked
Mhm.
about it. Like, I guess we'll talk about it a little bit. Like, what are your, like, holiday, like, not necessarily, like, on the feast itself of, like, the Christmas feast, but, like, just, like, the general, like, Christmas holiday, like, that day or what have you. Like, what are your drinks? What are your, like, special meals that you go to?
Roxy makes a mean, like, alcoholic Kahlua, Bailey's, hot chocolate kind of like a crock
Ooh.
pot type thing, which is always,
Oh,
like,
okay.
pretty fucking amazing. Food though, candied sweet potatoes, fucking money.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get a lot of shit for this, but I don't really do turkey on
We've talked
Christmas. I don't
Yeah,
really like turkey to begin with.
you and I are both ham guys.
Yeah.
We're both the
We
Christmas ham.
We've done Christmas ham, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years in a row now. We
Mhm.
always make it, and it's fucking amazing. This year, though, apparently, my father-in-law has bought, like, $100, like, pot roast that he's gonna be making, so I'm pretty hyped for that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hey, look, when you haven't been able to do Christmas dinner together in, like, 2 years, might as
Yeah,
well go big,
you
right?
gotta go all out, right? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, fingers crossed. Like I said, there's some restrictions coming
It's
down the
still
pipe tomorrow.
it's still
Fingers crossed it
possible.
doesn't
I'm
go bad.
I mean, it's one of those things where I think, unfortunately, like, I think a lot of people are just gonna throw caution to the wind and do it anyway because, like,
Yeah.
it's so close to the holiday.
I think a lot of people know too that a lot of these restrictions are coming because of all the anti-vax nut jobs who are just, like, screwing up everything for everybody by, like, just not getting vaccinated and kicking this shit in the curb finally. Like, they're just refusing to do it. And so a lot
Yeah.
of people are just gonna be like, well, I've done my part, so fuck it. I'm seeing my family. You can't make me miss it twice or 2 years in a row. It's just
Yeah.
not gonna happen.
Yeah, and especially if you're, like, somebody who, like, say you work full time from home now, you're not going outside that often as it is, you're probably gonna be
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I don't care, I'm fine," and do it anyway. Yeah, ham. Like, yeah, Christmas
Yeah,
ham is my go-to.
you and I are both like the Christmas ham dudes, which
Yeah,
is funny
Christmas ham,
because
Thanksgiving ham.
I think every podcast like that talks about like Christmas dinners, like if there's a ham, we are not going to dinner. Like,
Really, Jesus,
or sorry,
God,
if there's not turkey, we're not going to dinner.
turkey is not that good. I'm sorry, it's not that
I
good.
agree.
Like, it's fine. Like, here's the thing: a turkey sandwich, like if somebody hands me a turkey sandwich, that's awesome. Like, I'm totally down for any sort of like turkey slices or that kind of like, or even just like a small bit of like turkey fillet kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
I am not like big on the whole, oh, here's the big roast turkey out in front. Like that. I've never been like, I never look at that. I'm like, oh, I want to eat that much turkey. It's a very bland white meat. Like it's just not worth it. Ham is I'm so much more of like the honey glazed ham kind
yeah,
of guy
same.
or that kind of a thing.
Give me
Yeah,
that sweet drizzle over top of it.
Sweet drizzle. I think I've talked about I think I've talked about before that I also am like very unconventionally. I'm a big sucker for like Swedish meatballs and that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, but any like mashed potatoes and gravy like is my
yeah.
jam any day of the week. I'm trying to think like you know what, like the big Christmas traditions I guess for like snacks and stuff for me are like, you know what, like one of them is very basic. It's just going to Costco and getting that big red tin of Costco like European cookies. So
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
You
yeah.
can't beat them. And then you've got something for your sewing kits after.
I
Yeah.
I actually avoided going to Costco this year in anticipation of Christmas because every year we've gone, we've bought like one of those like $300 like Christmas light up train thing setups. I don't know.
I thought you were gonna
I don't
be
know if
like,
you
I
can see
got
in
a
the
big
background.
frosty inflatable for my apartment.
If you can see in the background there, that right next to the
Oh,
wall. Wait,
oh
where's my
yeah.
finger? Yeah,
That's so
right there.
funny. If you're
Yeah.
watching this on video, yeah, you can see like the back of it. Yeah,
It's
that's
the most
funny.
Christmassy purchase I've made in so long. And then last year we got this monster, like 10-foot tall tree. So
Yeah,
we have to
are you a
avoid some
are you a
places.
plastic or real tree?
Ours is fake. We did a few years of real tree, but like just too much of a hassle, too much of a mess, and
It's
trying to figure out where to dispose of like a dead tree is always like a pain in the
yeah,
ass. So I was like,
yeah.
screw it.
If you live in a house that like you have the room for like a real tree, like where it's like it's not going to be as hard to like get it done, like you have a driveway with your own like bucket to like throw it in kind of thing.
Mhm.
That's when the real tree is good. But like if you're living in like an apartment or like a smaller place, yeah, plastic tree is where you're gonna go because it's you can't deal with that hassle. I do
Yeah,
like
yeah.
going to like the Christmas tree farm and like getting to like saw down a Christmas tree. Like that's fun. Like that is a
That is
very fun
pretty dope. Yeah,
activity. They always got like hot chocolate. They always got like candy canes. It's great. It's a great
yeah.
little experience. Yeah. What's the other one for me? Like in terms of like snacks and stuff, or like, I mean, honestly, just like a good like just like yeah, straight up a good hot chocolate, like a good hot chocolate, or like
Mhm.
mocha in the
Yeah, you gotta
morning.
have one of those. If you don't have
It's
that, it's just not the same.
yeah, you can't go wrong with it. Like it's so hard to mess up a hot chocolate. Like it's always going to be good. Well, actually that's not true. You will easily mess up a hot chocolate if you do the heathen thing of making it with water instead of milk. Please don't do that. It's terrible.
It's
Yeah.
just not the same.
It's so not it tastes so bad. Like it tastes so bad compared to hot chocolate made with milk. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't like milk substitute totally fine. Water, no. Don't do it with water. It's
Don't you
terrible.
don't you fucking do it, I
Don't you
swear to
even
God.
try. Yeah, and then obviously like yeah, any sort of like, Christmas cookies are great. It's a whole yeah. It's
Yeah.
a yeah.
Sugar cookies?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, I still have to figure out what I'm gonna get you for Christmas. I gotta get you a Christmas present,
Likewise,
my guy.
buddy. I
Yeah, well,
mean, we won't
maybe
be
we'll
able to
do
see each other for like 3 or 4 weeks because of the shutdown, but hey,
we'll do
eventually.
yeah, we'll do a secret Easter bunny. Like,
I guess yeah, oh my God.
yeah.
But
When that very,
we'll prep each other
the
Easter
next time we
gifts.
see each other. Yeah. I think I mean, what's nice about okay, this particular version, like this particular uh pandemic spot that we're in, I think we'll be able to see each other sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
Specifically, like
fingers
booster
crossed.
shots are available now.
Yes, if you
Um,
are eligible for a booster shot, please, people, go get it. Like
yes,
so,
please
people
do
like
that.
Lachlan and I can get like our spot in the line pushed up, so we can get ours.
Yes, please. Yeah, and then yeah, we'll probably do some sort of like of some sort of gift exchange just like a lot later in the year.
We'll do a CreaseCast Secret Santa. between
Yeah, there-
you, myself,
Yeah,
and Jake.
gee, I wonder who got me. Yeah, I'll be like, gee, I wonder who got me this. There you go. I sold my
We'll
talk
do a
about good
secret.
Christmas. The Futurama Christmas is also very good. I just watched that
Oh,
recently.
the robot Santa or whatever.
The robot Santa where he thinks everyone is naughty. The
Yeah.
whole bit with that, like the whole you've all been naughty, very naughty indeed. Except you, Dr. Zoidberg. This is for you. A pogo stick. Like, it's so good. I just watched that the other day. It's fantastic. I love that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what it'll be for us. It'll just be us like all like, oh, I sold my
Exchanging.
hair to get you these fancy combs. Oh boy, this will go great for my new wig. Like it's the hair.
Yeah.
Great. Great. We'll do that.
Hell
Gift
yeah.
of the Magi or whatever.
Of the Magi. Otherwise, folks, if you enjoyed this completely non-hockey based episode of the CreaseCast,
Nonsensical holiday episode.
yeah, the Christmas special, the first annual Christmas special.
Yes.
which
Oh,
is
you should hear what I told Cody about my plans for our next holiday.
Christmas special, which hopefully won't be impacted by a fucking pandemic. But
Yeah.
if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, whatever platform you're using, whether that's Apple Podcasts or whether that's Spotify or even YouTube. Give us a little like, ring that
Yes,
bell,
please
leave us
do.
some comments leave us a comment. We appreciate and read every single one of them. I am Cody Sievertson. You can follow me on Twitter at Cody Sievertson and my website, ahlnuxharvest.com. Lachlan, where can the fine folks find you and your content?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease. You can also find my writing work at Canucks Army. I had 2 articles come out today, one of which was a Christmas-themed article, and the other was just talking about just gushing over Thatcher Demko's new gear. And then I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else you can find me right now. Yeah, and then obviously there's the Patreon. We'll probably have some Patreon stuff coming up in a little bit.
This is basically a preview of what a Patreon episode would look like.
Yes,
just
exactly.
Nothing.
Just yeah, literally. You know what? It's literally this is the last day of school for us right now. It's the winter before we go to winter break, where everything is just all right. We're watching movies and we're drawing making paper snowflakes. Everybody, get out your scissors. Like, God, we should have done that. We should have just been making paper snowflakes.
An hour and a half of cutting snowflakes. That's it.
Yeah, we're just talking about Brock Besser, and his hot streak, and I'm like, oh, look at this one. Just pull that up. Like we mentioned at the beginning, no episode obviously on Friday because that's Christmas, Christmas Eve or Christmas. Oh no, Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
We will be back on the 27th, by which point, hopefully Canucks are back to playing some games, or at least prepping for games, and the World Juniors will be
we'll be
underway.
Talking some World Juniors at the very least.
Yeah.
Otherwise, folks, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next time that we see you, whenever that is. Merry Christmas or happy holidays to all of you.
Bye.